Welcome. I am so glad that you're here. Today, I want to talk to you about overgiving, and I want to ask you a few questions. Do you ever feel like you give and give until there's nothing left for yourself? Maybe you're the friend who's always available, the partner who carries the emotional weight in the relationship, or the family member that everyone relies on. But when it's your turn to ask for help, it feels impossible to do, like you're letting everyone down. But the thing is, overgiving isn't just what's draining you. It's a sign that there's something much, much deeper at play. But what is this deeper thing? When did it start and how can you break free from it? The reason I want to teach you about this, and I'm so glad that you clicked on this video, it's because when you learn to prioritize yourself, you're gonna feel so much more energized and at peace, but you also transform every single relationship around you, especially the one with yourself. Once you break free from overgiving, that's when you finally get to experience the deep, reciprocal, mutual connections that you've been seeking your whole life. If you don't address this though, the cycle of burnout, resentment, and feeling unseen will only continue to drain your energy and actually leaving you stuck in relationships that don't serve you. But first, let's start by exploring why overgiving feels so natural to you, but so hard to stop. Most of us who struggle with overgiving most likely learned really early in life that our worth was attached to how much we could do for others. These patterns often stem from childhood experiences in which you had to be the good child or take on responsibilities that weren't really meant for a child. Maybe you had a parent who relied on you for emotional support, or the love that you received from your parents was very conditional on you being good or helpful. And looking back and understanding these roots is so important because they still show up in your relationships today. For example, you might be the friend who's always available for that late night crisis call. Even if you're exhausted, everyone knows that you're that friend who is gonna pick up, you're gonna help no matter what. Or you're the daughter who your mother calls to talk about all her problems, or maybe she even vents to you about a sibling, but yet she never listens or really cares for any of your problems. Or you could be in a relationship where you're the partner who is always the one compromising. And you might think you're being nice, or that's how relationships are, but this isn't about being nice. These patterns that are showing up in your life today, they actually developed years and years ago as survival patterns that kept you emotionally safe. And if you think, it can't be that bad, right? I want you to think of the last time that you said yes to something when you really wanted to say no, either because you were tired or you had too much on your plate or because you just didn't feel like. Can you think of one? I can look back and think of many instances in which before I struggled so much to say no. But all that this is doing is actually just keeping you trapped in a cycle of emotional exhaustion and resentment. So how do we stop? How do we break free from that? The very first step is awareness. I want you to start asking yourself questions. Why am I saying yes to this? Is it because I want to, or is it because I feel like I have to? Just this simple pause next time someone asks something of you can be a very significant step into helping you to break free from this autopilot mode that you're in. The second step is repeating a message that I think it's gonna be really important for you to learn. That is, your worth is not at all tied to what you can do for others, or how much you can do for others, or how much you sacrifice yourself for others. Your worth is entirely based on who you are. The third is start to look at yourself from a place of compassion and not judgment. And what do I mean by that? I want you to know that this pattern that you developed of overgiving isn't really your fault. This was a mechanism that you learned when you were a child for your own emotional survival. Now, I don't want you to look at yourself in this process and be like, ugh, why do I keep doing this? Why am I like this? Just like these negative confrontations that you have with yourself, because this started a long time ago. This pattern did serve you at one point, and I want that to be very clear to you. It did serve you. It was necessary. But now you have reached, thankfully, a moment in your life where you realize that you deserve more, that you want more. So try to look at yourself from compassion. As we learn new tools and develop new skills in how to stop overgiving, I just want you to be a bit compassionate towards yourself. Sounds good? Now that we understand a little bit about where overgiving comes from, I want us to look at how it is affecting your current relationships, how it affects your life now, because it's important that you recognize this pattern so you can break them. When we carry these early patterns of overgiving into our current relationships, they create a very painful cycle. Let me paint you a picture that you might recognize. You meet someone new, whether it's a potential romantic partner or a new friendship, and you immediately fall into the role of being their support system. You become their problem solver and their emotional caretaker. They know from the get-go that you're always there, you're always available, and they are taken care of. Now, this pattern is a little sneaky because at first, it might feel like you're doing the right thing. It feels good to be wanted. And when you have a friend or a new partner that constantly needs you or turns to you for emotional support, you feel valued, you feel appreciated. But in these dynamics, you often put yourself in the back burner. You're not able to show up authentically. You're not able to be the true you that you are because you're always putting their emotional needs first. You find yourself exhausted, resentful, and often wondering, why is it that no one cares for my needs? Why is it that no one thinks of me? Well, the reality is that we train them not to. We make people expect nothing less of us. We unconsciously send them this message that we don't need anything. And people, like even well-meaning ones, are just gonna take us for our word. And again, this creates a relationship dynamic in which we're valued for what we do and not for who we are, because we're not even showing them who we are. And yet again, we just repeated in another relationship something that we learned when we were just a child. So here's what's happening behind the scene in these types of relationships. Every time you override your own needs to meet someone else's, you're reinforcing both their expectations that you always be available and your own belief that you're only worthy of love when you're giving, when you're doing something for others, when you're sacrificing yourself. And this creates a self-fulfilling prophecy where you attract and maintain relationships that mirror exactly your earliest experiences of conditional love. So how do we stop that? How do we solve it? The solution can start with a simple but powerful shift. Before saying yes to anyone, I want you to stop, pause for a quick second, and ask yourself, if I knew I would be loved and accepted either way, what would I choose? Would I say yes to this or would I say no? Now, I know what you might be thinking. Really easy to say, but putting that in practice seems a little difficult. Well, the hardest part is that changing a pattern that you have done for a long time in your life can feel terrifying. So this is why we need to stop with small, manageable steps that feel safe. And safety is the key word here, because I want to remind you again that the only reason you did this as a child was because it kept you emotionally safe. It was what you needed to survive. So whenever you're in a situation in which you might not feel safe, guess what your body's gonna try to do? Keep you safe. That's its entire goal. Let's look at a common scenario. A friend texts you late at night, they need some help, they're struggling, they just broke up with their partner, but you have an early and important meeting the next morning, you spent all night preparing for it, you need rest. Now your automatic response might be to stop everything, put your goals, put your needs, put your meeting aside, and just be there for them. These are the types of situations where it's safe to try something different, because there are ways in which you can show care for your friend but still care and prioritize yourself. Here's an idea of how you can do that. You can say something like, hey, I care about you, I hear you, but I really need to get some rest tonight. Is there any chance we can talk tomorrow, say 5 p.m.? Notice how these types of responses acknowledge both their needs and yours. You're not just shutting them down. You're not telling them you're not there for them. You're just accommodating yourself and your needs as well. And there are definitely some messages that you can expect to tell yourself, like, well, but if I say no, then this friend's not gonna stay friends with me anymore, or they'll be angry with me, they'll be upset with me, they're not gonna count on me anymore, or I'm just selfish. I should make time for others. Now, these are thoughts that might come up a few times, especially as this is something completely new that you're trying, and it takes practice, it takes time. So just be aware that these are some thoughts that you might hear. And a way you can combat these is acknowledge them, but know that they're not facts. They're echoes of old beliefs that kept you safe in the past, but no longer serves you. And the more you practice setting boundaries, the longer you try this, the safer you're gonna feel. This is completely uncharted territory for you. So it's normal to feel like you're the worst person alive when you say your first no. Don't worry, that's normal. It's gonna get better with time. Now, the ultimate truth in all of this is that healthy relationships can absolutely handle boundaries. And people who genuinely care and love you, meaning the people that you want in your life to begin with, they're gonna care about you and your limits and things that are important for you. So a friend that cares for you and loves you, let's say in this instance, this example that I just gave you, they're not gonna care that you're not available at that exact moment because they know how important your meeting is or how important work is or just how much you need rest. Or even if you just said, hey, I can't talk to you right now without even giving them any explanation, a good friend is just gonna be like, okay, we'll talk when you can. We'll talk when you have time. They understand boundaries and they respect boundaries. So I just want to remind you that changing these patterns, changing these habits isn't really about becoming someone else, isn't about becoming a completely different person. It's giving yourself the opportunity to show up fully and authentically as yourself. I know this is probably something new for you, but don't worry, I'm here to support you. And if you'd like to be part of this beautiful community of healing and growth, don't forget to hit subscribe. Thank you so much for being here. I'll see you in the next video.